Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, a very warm welcome to you all. My name is Amine, and on behalf of WWF-Pakistan's Recharge Pakistan project and the global WWF network, it is a privilege to welcome you all to COP30 sideline event, The Cost of Inaction, Scaling Nature-Based Solutions for Climate Resilience in Pakistan. Pakistan today stands at the front line of climate impacts, from recurring floods to intensifying droughts, and the stakes have never been higher. Against this backdrop, Recharge Pakistan has emerged as one of the world's largest climate adaptation projects dedicated to ecosystem-based adaptation and integrated flood risk management. Through a combination of green infrastructure and restoration of wetlands, forests, and natural water channels, the project aims to reduce climate vulnerability across the Indus Basin, one of Asia's most critical river systems. Today's session is built around a crucial question. What are the economic consequences of inaction in a climate-stressed country like Pakistan? And how can nature-based solutions provide financially sound, scalable pathways for resilience? Over the past year, the Recharge Pakistan team has carried out pre-implementation economic modeling that compares the potential avoided damages from ecosystem-based interventions with their implementation costs. These early estimates offer a first look at how nature-based solutions can complement and in some cases significantly enhance traditional infrastructure approaches. With COP30 placing a strong emphasis on climate resilience, adaptation, and nature-based solutions, today's dialogue connects science, economics, policy, and community perspectives. Now, it is my pleasure to invite Mr. Mohammad Fawad Hayat, Senior Director of the Recharge Pakistan project at WWF Pakistan. Fawad has over 18 years of experience in climate resilience, water governance, and environmental policy, and has led large-scale programs under Pakistan focused on adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and ecosystem restoration. Under his leadership, Recharge Pakistan has transitioned from planning to implementation readiness, establishing federal provincial agreements, institutional coordination platforms, and community engagement structures. Mr. Hayat will speak to the upcoming report, yet to be launched, to discuss some preliminary findings which will set the stage for today's panel. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Amine, for those kind words and the good start. Thank you so much for setting the stage. Hi, everyone. My name is Fawad Hayat. I lead the Recharge Pakistan program at WWF. Recharge Pakistan is a 7-year multi-partner climate adaptation program that aims to reduce flood and drought risks by restoring ecosystems, strengthening natural water flows, and piloting green infrastructure across some of the country's most climate vulnerable districts. The project combines hydrological modeling, institutional partnerships, and community-centered implementation to demonstrate how nature-based solutions can complement conventional infrastructure and strengthen long-term resilience. Before we move into our panel discussion, I will be sharing the key findings from an upcoming analytical brief titled The Cost of Inaction. This is a pre-implementation assessment and the full report will be launched later this year in Pakistan, but today we're sharing selected insights to help anchor our conversation in evidence. Thank you so much, guys. So Recharge Pakistan is Pakistan's one of the largest climate adaptation projects. It began pioneering ecosystem-based adaptation and green infrastructures to reduce flood and drought risks in Pakistan's Indus Basin. Pakistan has a unique topography. It faces droughts as well as floods. So while the project is still in its early stages, its analytical groundwork is already contributing to national discussions on climate adaptation and nature-based investments. The challenge. So climate extremes are intensifying if Pakistan faces recurrent high-impact floods and droughts. 2025 floods, 881 fatalities, 3,200 villages inundated, 2.4 million affected. 2022 floods, 1,700 plus fatalities, 33 million affected, and 30 billion in losses. And this all started from our super floods of 2010, 1,900 plus fatalities, 1.4 million acres of cropland submerged, and 1 billion in crop losses. Droughts from 2000 to 2002, 2015, 18, so on and so forth. These numbers ever increase. That is the reason we started working on the Recharge Pakistan program. Now the problem, the limits of conventional systems. Conventional flood control and water management systems have reached their limits and in some cases are failing frankly. They cannot really stop the ever increasing climate disasters. Adaptive strategies that integrate engineered water infrastructure with natural ecosystems are urgently needed. That is today's need. The ambition of Recharge Pakistan. I say the word ambition because it's something we're starting, something we have done at a very smaller scale in WWF and globally, but we're now upscaling. So the ambition is there because for 100 years or more, the irrigation departments and others have been working on their grey infrastructure. This time around, the project's aim is to transform how Pakistan manages drought and flood risk by aligning hydrological infrastructure with ecosystem-based adaptations under the umbrella of nature-based solutions. So EbA, we have restoration of degraded riparian ecosystems and excavation of flow paths, natural drainage pathway restoration. And GI interventions include the Gabion Barnes recharge basins, retention areas, flood dispersal embankments. The project primarily stands on two things. One is the EbA, which is 12,000 hectares of land to be restored and 34 kilometers of channel flow paths and 127 green infrastructures. There's going to be a 7-year program carefully monitoring the EbA and GI over that period, and the initiative is supported by the GCF, the Coca-Cola Foundation and WWF, especially under the lead of Government of Pakistan and communities in the project. It operates on a 7-year horizon, ends in 2030, with about 4 watersheds including Dia Khan, Ramak, Chakarlari and Manchar. Now, the cost of action. Why did we actually go ahead with this report and the need that we started working on this particular one before even the launch of the program or during the very start of the program? We need to figure out what can we save as part of the investments we are going to be investing into the program as nature-based solutions, and there are areas where practically there's no infrastructure and everything is at risk, including the livelihoods, the life of people itself, the agriculture and everything. So we are investing in both of these places. So that's the reason some figures we are having a heavy cost as compared to what we are saving, and in most cases there are costs which are saving a lot more of infrastructure. That means moving towards development, sustainable development, resilient development. In climate future, without adaptation, flood damages 2025 to 34 could reach up to 59.2 million across both project areas. The above projection covers monetary costs from flood damages in 2025. These have following categories: the cropped areas, housing, infrastructure, other direct damages, and indirect damages. In terms of avoided damages, this primarily entails into two types. One, where we are going ahead with the resilience building infrastructure development for the first time. That means our spending is more as compared to what we are saving. And then on the EBS side, we are estimating more avoided losses for that matter. The project avoided damages through GI interventions is approximately 53 million, and that's going to roughly offset about 85% of estimated that, 127 green infrastructures, even before adding monetized value of environmental co-benefits, which is going to be a greater number for that matter. In terms of investments in EBA, measures financially justify themselves because that's where we spend 10.6 million while we save about $47 million, and this again is before monetized values of environmental co-benefits. So in terms of EBA, that's about 5 times of what we're going to be saving from the investments. Now behind the numbers, protecting lives and livelihoods, that's an important. Saving a life is saving humanity. So that's where we come in. So 49% of avoided losses in these projections relate to housing. Thousands of rural families spared from recurring loss of homes, possessions and savings. That's been a burden on the fiscal budget of the country as well. 17% concerns agricultural land, protecting livelihoods where a single failed season can push household into debt. While engineered structures address immediate flood and drought risks, the ecosystem component extend the value of each intervention well beyond avoided damages. Now carbon sequestration, that's a long-term return, but it still is there. We're sowing the seed for that particular matter. 12,000 hectares of native regeneration is projected to sequester about 51,600 ton carbon dioxide annually by 2036. So 7-year program, maturity 5 years, hence full sequestration capacity would reach in about 12 years. At 2025 price levels, this represents an annual gross carbon value of about 3.8 million for the year 2036. In case of EBA, the restoration of ecosystem requires a longer time horizon than built solutions before benefits intent threshold. The cost of EBA measures is 10.6 recovered by 2038 and the full cost of GI intervention around 2050. But the important part here is that we understand that these are the areas where we haven't really spent for infrastructures. So we are venturing into areas which are most affected and most vulnerable for that matter, and where we can actually save lives. Wetland restoration is a non-market benefit encompassing large and small retention areas, 15,800 hectares of restored wetlands, sustained biodiversity and cultural landscapes. Benefits include habitat functions, nursery services, area of cultural and community values. Using a conservative global value of $607 per hectare, for those non-market, the cost of GI is about 61 million for that matter, recovered in 10 years. The economic case for nature-based solutions. Even before counting, wider ecosystem services model projections show GI and EBA nearly match their capital cost and avoided damages alone. Recharge Pakistan demonstrates the potential for nature-based resilience to eventually pay for itself, offering an evidence-based case for scaling such approaches. A baseline and yearly data collection across floods, droughts, and ecosystem indicators will generate the real evidence needed to validate these evidences. Now the policy lessons, strengthening institutional update. I move towards the end of my presentation. The long-term adoption depends on institutional ownership, particularly by irrigation and agriculture departments. Agreements that embed EbA and GI with these agencies will build local capacity and continuity. Data sharing between departments will ensure planning and integration, and encouraging revision update to policy legal instruments explicitly mainstream GI and EbA. The National Water Policy Implementation Framework from 18 to 30, Climate Change Act, the National Adaptation Plan, and draft provincial adaptation plans. Policy lessons, financing and replication. Demonstrated cost effectiveness makes NBS suitable for integration into Pakistan's public sector development program. That's our main annual budgeting from the federal government. Evidence from avoided damages and co-benefits can inform future plans, proposals, and attract blended finance. Scaling up of EBA and GI requires progress on 4 points. Geographically from sites to districts to basins, institutionally embed into national provincial plans and budgets, financially move from short-term donor to sustainable blended finance and PPP, public-private partnership, and socially empower communities as co-builders and owners. Action pathways are 4, engage communities and provincial departments in co-planning, blend climate and private finance to de-risk investment, develop training for engineers and planners, and earmark GI in adaptation budgeting. Assessing cost effectiveness nearly at the feasibility stage helps determine whether avoided losses can reasonably offset intervention costs. This creates a benchmark for ongoing. So data and analysis throughout implementation are critically implemented, allowing planners to evaluate whether GI and EBA are reliable structures or not, whether we should continue with that or we should change something. When departments such as irrigation and agriculture directly involved in designing these things, they gain ownership and technical familiarity into their planning and budgeting, and the communities are also involved with particular one, so they move in one sync. With national and provincial adaptation budgets already in hundreds of millions setting aside, small percentage will transform resilience planning, and financing channels already exist. We just have to make them work. Thank you so much for that. I request Amine for the video.
Before we begin, we will start with a short documentary. This film brings forward the voices of the communities who live along the Indus Basin, the farmers, the families, and the local stewards whose lives, livelihoods, and landscapes will be shaped by the decisions we collectively make today. Their stories ground the technical evidence in real human experience. Let's watch the documentary.
उस वक्त जो है ना हम ये बैल वगैरह भेज कर उनसे जो है ना गंदम या आटा वगैरह ले लेते और अपना गुजारा कर लेते थे
बहुत ज्यादा परेशान अब खुद से ज्यादा परेशान मैं काफी साल आबादी बेनाम नगर वण वगैरह से मुल्क का सार्थ करेंगे वण वगैरह तो नेस्ते अब आफत नहीं खुश्क लगी तो हमें जब मैं गोरा जबल है मैं गोरा गर्मी बहुत ज्यादा है
तो सदी तेरे ले दख्तला बानी मुलावाड़ा खलक दा रोमा ज़बाद दा बड़ा ज़रानस्ता मुराद शू
2009 ਦੇ ਫਲੱਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮਗਰਬ ਸਾਈਡ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬੰਨ ਹੈ ਟੁੱਟ ਗਿਆ ਤੇ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਇਆ ਹੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵਲਾ 2022 ਦੇ ਫਲੱਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਖਤਰਾ ਹੈ ਟੁੱਟਣ ਦਾ ਅਲਹਮਦੁਲਿਲਾ ਅਸਾਂ ਬਚਾ ਕੇ ਦਾ ਟਰੈਕਟਰ ਆਣ ਕੇ ਦਾ ਖੁੱਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਪਾਣੀ ਕੱਢਾ ਹੈ अगर खुदा न खास्ता बारिशां मजीद आईयां तो वादा सा को होदा खतरा जो इंटर टूटे आबादी दे पास स्कूल को भी नुकसान पहुंचा सकदा है रोड गुजरा पी है इदा ही खतरा थींदा है नाल जेरी जमीन सारी काश्त है उना को भी नुकसान दे सकदा है
कितर रेंज सिंध और बलूचिस्तान दोनों के कंटिन्यूअस माउंटेन है फ्लैश फ्लड का शुरुआत यहाँ से होता है पानी बह के आबादियों की तरफ जाता है और काफी उनका नुकसान तो हो जाते हैं इसके बाद ये पानी मंचर झील की तरफ चला जाता है या तो फ्लैश फ्लड की वजह से यहाँ पानी ज्यादा हो जाता है या पानी न होने की वजह से यहाँ ड्राउट भी आ जाता है
In Pakistan, climate risks are not abstract anymore. They are a daily reality. The average temperature has risen by 0.57 over the last century. If you look at Pakistan, about 40% will be unlivable if the temperature rises by 2 degrees. It means more rainfalls, floods, droughts, unprecedented rainfalls in monsoon. That is where the concept of Recharge Pakistan started.
Recharge Pakistan is a very ambitious dream. The entire journey started after the 2010 floods, which were also one of the unprecedented floods that the Pakistan ever had.
The damages caused by the 2010 flood amounting to about $10.9 billion. That's an estimate. And then resultantly, every single year we saw floods. Building up to the 2022 floods, costing about over $30 billion in infrastructure and economic losses. That's where the Recharge Pakistan came into being.
The past flood protection plans primarily focused on engineering solutions to manage and contain a river or the floodplains. We wanted to have nature-based solution to address challenges related to flood risk, to slow the flow of water, to improve the natural drainage which used to contain the riverine floods, to improve the catchment areas. We wanted to work with the communities to build their capacity so they are prepared to face these challenges. We approached the government and luckily we got very good response. In 2023, this project was approved.
A multi-grant coming through public and private partnership, bringing in 66 million from the Green Climate Fund, bringing in the Coca-Cola Foundation with a 5 million share and $1.8 million by the WWF itself. So all these partners coming in for one common cause, strengthen and restore the ecosystems, the wetlands of Pakistan.
WWF पानी को जखीरा करने के लिए एक यहाँ रिटेंशनल एरियाज गैबियन बंद बना रही है और रिचार्ज बेसिन है या उन पानी को ऐसा रास्ता दे दे जो आबादियां हैं वो बच जाएं.
This project focuses to build the climate resilience in the country, to protect biodiversity and also help the vulnerable communities who are in the front line of facing such climate crisis.
WWF जो काम कर रहा है तो ये नेचर बेस्ड सॉल्यूशन है. सिर्फ पानी को रास्ता देने के लिए ग्रीन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बनेंगे, उसमें लोकल लोग काम करेंगे और जो भी फायदा होगा उन लोकल लोगों को ही होगा.
We're currently operating in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where we are working on 2 watersheds, which is Dia Khan and Daramak. Moving on to Balochistan, we work upstream on the Chakar Lahiri watershed, and then moving towards the Manchar and Sen. We are going ahead with 127 green infrastructures, moving from grey to green.
We strongly believe that this project will result in a paradigm shift, the way we plan, the way we implement, and the way we work on flood management projects. Inshallah, when it will be successful and included in the climate adaptation plans, flood risk management plans, that would give us an opportunity to scale it up and to make it mainstream.
In support with the federal government, the Ministry of Climate Change, which is the NDA for GCF as well, and the Federal Flood Commission, and the 3 provinces where we work, I'm pretty hopeful that once this program is implemented, we will have restored ecosystems, enhanced communities' contribution in terms of fiscal space, in terms of their life, agriculture, health, their earnings, and their safety act. That's what the Recharge Pakistan brings on the table.
Thank you. I hope you all got some insight into the communities that Recharge Pakistan works with, its approach, and its way forward. We will now move into our main panel segment. It is my pleasure to bring back Mr. Muhammad Fawad Hayat. He will begin by presenting key findings from the project's upcoming cost of inaction analysis, followed by moderating a panel discussion with our distinguished speakers. Fawad, over to you.
Thank you so much, Amine. Thank you, guys. I would like to start by respectfully requesting Ma'am Aisha Moriani, the Secretary, Ministry of Climate Change, Government of Pakistan. She's also the head of delegation for the Pakistan at the COP30. She's the Federal Secretary at Ministry of Climate Change, a key driver of Pakistan's national climate change agenda and the country's engagement on adaptation, policy alignment, and climate finance. May I request ma'am to please join us on stage. Thank you, ma'am. I would now like to request our next panelist, Manuel Pelga Vidal, the Global Lead for Climate and Energy at WWF International, former Environment Minister of Peru, and a globally respected voice on climate governance, transparent systems, and nature-based climate solutions. If you could please join us. And finally, we are honored to have Christian Close, whose leadership across global conservation strategy and climate resilience programming continues to shape how WWF network supports countries in scaling nature-based solutions and long-term adaptation pathways. Thank you so much. I feel a little burden of the heavy panel we have. So I'll restrict myself to small talking and small questions and let them answer the bigger ones. I'll start with ma'am with you. So we start with the policy levers now. Which 2 or 3 public finance and policy levers, for example, climate budget tagging for EBA or the GI, basin level program windows, would help Pakistan embed pre-implementation evidence like avoided damages into annual and medium budgeting at federal and provincial levels?
Thank you very much. First of all, I am so grateful to WWF for organizing this event here in their pavilion. I think first of all, I would like to appreciate the work that they are doing under water recharge. I think these type of nature-based solutions are really required. And here we are talking about global goal on adaptation, and we need to scale these initiatives up, and we really need climate finance for these type of solutions to help countries like Pakistan who are facing devastating floods, Gulf incidents, and glacier melt. So I think this is an extremely important initiative for Pakistan. In the national institutional system, we have federal government has started green tagging. The objective is to have a system of classification that how much money is being spent on adaptation and mitigation from the federal budget, and now the provinces will also start doing that. In the planning and development ministry, they have developed guidelines for identification of adaptation mitigation measures within every project. So the objective is to mainstream adaptation within the country and develop SOPs and guidelines for all those who are involved in the project development process. And then we have also started Green Sukuk initiative. Projects have been identified which will be pitched for these Green Sukuk. We are working in collaboration with the World Bank to strengthen our mechanisms. And also the cabinet has also approved carbon credit guidelines to ensure that Pakistani market is ready to make use of the climate finance raised through carbon credits. We have a very good pipeline of projects. Yesterday our chief minister inaugurated the pavilion, and she explained that how political will can help a biggest province in doing transformation in green transport, in waste management, and several other initiatives where smog was a big threat for them. So the national and the provincial, both type of interventions are extremely important when it comes to climate change and environment. It's okay?
That's up to you if you want to continue. Otherwise, we can go. Thank, thank you. I mean, these are clear signals of getting evidence into budgets. Manuel, I'll move to you. You've seen many countries avoid the pilot trap. Let's widen the lens on that from pilots to mainstream actually. Which governance models and standards have helped countries move nature-based solutions from projects into core national adaptation strategies? And which two lessons are most applicable to Pakistan's Indus Basin scaling pathways?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you. So this is a very interesting question related to governance. And let me say something that for me is foundational. To promote a strong governance, to deal with this kind of climate extreme events, we do need first to promote understanding, then to move action towards creating policy coherence and effectiveness. Those three pillars are key. Why understanding? Because people, governments, do need to understand that climate extreme events will join us for now and for the future. And this idea that we used to have, the traditional way of thinking that these extreme events were just sporadic, it is not true. Now, those events are joining us in a more regular way with more impact and with more negative consequences. So the only way to deal with those events, it is by having clear actions as regards Pakistan and to promote effectiveness and coherence. That means how what it is now an initiative called Recharge Pakistan could be a strong public policy in the country. Because that gap, it is very important to be closed. It is not just about a project. It is about a national and local public policy in a country that is suffering those kind of climate extreme events. So how to do that? How can we promote that? By connecting some dots. First dot, it is to connect the national willingness with the local needs. That is something so important. That means to work with communities, that means to work with local authorities, that means to work with the people that it is on the ground. And by having authorities that can understand that that connection could make possible to build the sense of ownership. This kind of initiative deserves to build ownership, to have the local community understanding better what is their role to promote the objective of resilience that can deal with these climate extreme events. Also, what it is important in this governance building, it is to work in a cross-cabinet relation. So here we have somebody, some authority from the climate change authority, from the environmental side. But we do need to connect with the Minister of Finance, we do need to connect with the Ministry of Agriculture, with the Ministry of Transport. And they have to understand well that without them, this won't be possible. So also we have to build ownership in a cross-cabinet relation, and that is a key element. We do need, as you mentioned in your question, Mohammed, we do need to have standards. Because something that is important in nature-based solutions, it is that not every intervention on nature, it is a nature-based solution. So to be clear, there are clear standards. IUCN recently has just updated the MBS standards. And there are eight key indicators. One of those, it is that the intervention on nature must secure, first, that we are addressing a societal challenge, droughts or floods, it is one of those, climate, biodiversity, among some others. Second, that we have to secure ecosystem integrity. And third, that we have to create social value. And so if an intervention does not have any of those three, it is not MBS. And we do need to be clear on that. What does it mean, nature-based solution? We do need to connect this kind of initiative with the economy. And when we think about economy, it is not only the macro one, it's the micro. It's that economy on the ground, that local economy, because people deserve to have conditions for developing their own activities that are creating probably small, but incomes that they need to survive for the future. Cattle, fisheries, agriculture, crops, all of that. So if people is able to understand that this is not a project that is an environmental one, it's an economic initiative. It is something that will deal with that economic needs, that would be perfect for that. We do need to, I've already said, promote ownership and provide to people tools to measure progress. Because when it is about adaptation, the main problem with adaptation sometimes it is the lack of indicators, but we do know that the positive consequences of an adaptation process, it is most of the time a long-term consequence. So you do need to provide them tools to track progress, to know that they are really progressing on addressing those kind of events in a more effective way. And finally, what we do need to have, it is more research, more innovation. Because we do need to understand, and for this, the role of science is key. Science is always modeling what it could be the consequence of climate change. We do need to develop our actions strongly based on science. That is a key element. So if we are able to understand those elements and put it together, we will be more able to develop a strongest governance to deal with nature-based solutions for being more effective with climate extreme events.
Perfect, Manuel. Thank you. That's like a framework in itself, honestly, to move forward. The important part within that remains obviously science research, and a very important one is markets and finance. Our projections show 49% of avoided damages accrue to housing and 17% to agriculture, reminding us that nature-based solution is also about livelihoods and social protection. Christian, let's bring in markets and private sector alignment. How can market standards, nature risk disclosure, and value chain incentives be oriented so private capital supports community-centered nature-based solutions? And what practical steps can help companies invest where benefits are measurable? For example, flood risk reduction and wetland services. Over to you.
Thank you very much for having me here. I honestly have been always a huge fan of this project, and I definitely think it's a financial and an economic solution at the end of the day, because supply chain resilience, in business we always say future-proofing your business. And today we're seeing many supply chains that are having their supply at risk, be it agricultural crops because the climate is changing, being because of floods. So it's really understanding what are those risks and dependencies that the companies have. In WWF, we work with the water risk filter, we have the biodiversity risk filter, and that's kind of an entry point where companies can assess their dependencies and impacts in nature. And they do this because they need to understand how much they can lose and how much their value chain is impacted from this. So I think projects like Recharge Pakistan, we need as a conservation community, as a financial community, learn to market them for the private sector. Because really they are going to be, the private sector and the economic sectors have the biggest influence on lobbying in governments, in the governance, and they can change the game, right? And so I think I see three things of interventions that are useful. Market standard, as we said, right, like the different water risks and dependencies. Very appropriate to have heavy rain while we're having this panel, right? Welcome to Belen. If you haven't noticed, that this time it always rains. I think chain incentives. How can we make that procurement processes incentivize suppliers that have community engagement, that understand nature-based solutions, that can help implement and fund them, right? There needs to be a market for these solutions. Subsidies. We need to touch the ugly topic of subsidies. How can international and national subsidies be chosen to put forward towards these kind of interventions, right? And that together with blended finance, of course, I think this is a huge we have big bankable solutions projects with the Dutch government. We really help, and it's hard to find these projects at a large scale, and I think this is kind of the example. And reporting like the TNFD, the Task Force for Nature Financial Disclosure, I think it's something that the financial community is looking more and more to understand the companies that they lend money, how are those companies going to be able to give them back their money? And just to give you a very concrete example, because we are in my country, Brazil, in 2024, we had the biggest flood in Rio Grande do Sul, which is actually 500 kilometers from where I live. So I could really see it. And I think at the time I called Steve and I said, Steve, what can we do here? And like, well, Chris, this is years away from what is happening right now where you are, right? But I think understanding that the impacts in the economy, this flood had $19 billion impact and 2.4 million people affected. So as huge as the ones that you've had. And it was a very highly economic state. But guess what? How do you think that the infrastructure looks now that they're rebuilding? Very gray, I must say. So we need projects like this. We need to show the business case. So I'm really excited to see the outcomes that are going to keep coming in the next phases of Recharge.
Thank you, Christine. That's perfectly put. And I think that's the basic reason that we're so excited to actually implement this particular program. And now it is evident that this is what is required as well. I think as the host, you came in and brought the rain as well, which was much needed. We were all sweating since morning. Ma'am, I'll come back to you. So converting evidence to allocations. If you could introduce one system change in this budget cycle, joint planning cells, nature-based solution budget lines in PSDP or the annual development project, which would most quickly normalize routine public sector practice for EB and GI?
Basically, I think we have to work more with the provinces. Although there are very important nature-based solution initiatives at the federal level, one of the biggest with a cost of 122 billion rupees is upscaling Green Pakistan, and it works with the provinces, and federal government is providing matching grant. Whatever amount is provided by the province, federal government provides an equal amount for restoration of forests, for integrated watershed management initiatives, and the objective is to strengthen nature-based solutions. It even includes bioengineering. So there are federal government big initiatives, but the real impact will happen when we take these nature-based solutions to the provinces, and provinces start adding in their annual development plans. So we do have GCF project like Recharge Pakistan, And the impact of the implementation of this project would be that other provinces will start allocating their own resources for initiatives like this as they see the benefits. Because this Recharge Pakistan itself is a very important project because it provides safety from the flood water by creating few channels, which I think is the very important initiative and needs to be implemented very quickly, because we have seen in the three devastating floods that how livelihoods and crops are impacted. But there are few very small initiatives which are proven through research and are very simple. For example, the green belts on the roadsides have to be, slightly lower, 2-3 inches, so that there is, when there is a rain, water is there and it goes inside and it helps recharging. Similarly, if that level is slightly lower than the gray structure, it also helps the dust not to come on the road, and it helps in improving the air quality. So there are very small little initiatives as well, which if those are integrated within the local government planning and small, even in the gray infrastructure projects, if nature-based solutions are seen as complementing the gray initiatives, I think that is the kind of transition we need in the government planning. So we are trying to do that through the provincial planning departments as well as the federal ministry.
Perfect, ma'am. Thank you so much for that architecture. Thank you. That's great help. Manuel, I'll move towards you with the global architecture and the importance of MRV into that. So what global platforms or coalitions for MRV should Pakistan tap to convert these pre-implementation projects so that they can avoid $53 million of avoided damages from 127 green infrastructures and 47 million avoided damages from EBA into a durable national nature-based solution architecture? Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for that. That's really like connecting national delivery with global alignment. Christian, closing the loop with markets, private capital to public outcomes. What would the result aligned private finance blueprint look like here? Typing, Tying a corporate or blended finance contributions to site specific outcomes while ensuring benefits flow first to frontline communities. But this will go after we are done. So not alive, but this will go after this. Thank you so much, Christine. Thank you so much. I would really say that yes, recharge is a step in the door. I usually say back in my country that it might not be 1% or 2% of what is actually needed, but it's a step in the right direction, and a lot has to be replicated. And I completely agree with the insurance part coming in, because that's where the security will come in. We can't make structures and then they get damaged by the floods or other disasters. So they have to be resilient. The only way to do is to ensure through insurance, which will also actually push the contractors to make something which is sustainable and resilient towards that particular one. So I think that helps as a back channel for that matter. I'm really grateful to all you guys for being here today, where we linked evidence to institutions, basin governance, markets, MRV. These are pre-implementation projections, but already help us design smarter, from budgeting, procurement to maintenance and blended finance. I think what has been important today is a chart of pathway from estimates to actions, and then to know what is needed actually to go into as verticals from your experience, from Manuel, and from the policy implementations of the MAM Secretary. I thank you so much for being here today, and thank you everyone. Thank you so much.